Hello everybody, my name's Tom. Welcome back to another F1 Fantasy video. In this video we're going to be talking about my team selection for Monaco. Oh wait, was it Singapore? I'm pretty sure it's Brazil actually, but something somewhere has made me think it might be Monaco or Singapore. Can't think of what. Anyway, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Brazil. And yeah, I'm going to be thinking about my team selection for Brazil for sure. Yep, sprint weekend. The current team on screen is what's come out of Mexico. Pretty underwhelming to be honest. Pretty average slash below average. Actually dropped more or less 1,000 places because I just didn't back Ferraris enough. I think Piastri was still a fine shout, and I think he also would have been within a chance of victory or at the very least podium if he hadn't had a pretty much disastrous qualifying and went out in P17. So yeah, kind of looking back, Mexico overall the team was kind of more or less were expected. At least Piastri, for my sake, came back strongly and made some good amount of overtakes and some decent positions gained. Albon's just so susceptible to these turn one, like before even turn one appears, just crashing out. And I know it's not always his fault. It's just he's always in that vicinity, and it just seems to be him that gets tagged a lot of the time. So yeah, it feels pretty bad owning Albon this week, but he's done all right, kind of up to this point. Colapinto continues to just be amazing as a fantasy asset and just a general kind of F1 driver. I'm very happy with that. Bottas just scoring 2 points is phenomenal effort there from Bottas with his one overtake, one position gained. That's just fantastic. That's what you want to see from the man in green. But no, 2 times on Lando, again, kind of underwhelming, only 29 points. So let's jump in and have a look at where I'm kind of headed going into Brazil, because Brazil is the last of these triple headers, and then we've got a bit of a break before the final triple header and the end of the season. The end of the season is very much close upon us. Big time chips being laid down. For me personally, I'm very likely to be using a chip this weekend. The chip I'm most likely to be using is the autopilot. I have the autopilot in the 3 times left. Pretty much decided that I'm going to book in my 3 times for Qatar, just because I think it's a bit more of a safer, secure track, and given the nature of the high speed element, we should see a bit more hopefully for definite, a bit more of a definite who's actually going to win the race or who's likely to win the race. It does concern me a little bit that Red Bull will be a bit stronger there, I think. So it kind of puts me a bit at unease, but I can't wait for the perfect storm in this case. Like I said, there's only 4 races left. So I think the 3 times I'm going to save it off. Even though Brazil, I think people are tempted by it because it's good for overtakes and that sort of thing. But I just think there's quite a lot of high risk with Brazil. I've said it many times before. I've been kind of booking in Brazil for some sort of chip. I think if you've got no negative, it's a great opportunity to use it. For people like me who've got autopilot, I think it's also a great opportunity to use it, because right now the current situation in F1 Fantasy is we don't really know who's going to be the top dog. And looking at what happened in Mexico, Carlos Sainz through the practice sessions was actually very impressive. And with hindsight, looking back, yeah, the signs were there. If you excuse the pun, that was unintentional. The signs were there that Sainz was actually, the real deal in Mexico. He was consistently good through the practice sessions, even though the practice sessions were a bit disrupted with rookies taking part, tyre testing, that sort of thing. But Sainz just looked comfortable. So yeah, not going with Sainz for me, a bit punishing, lost out on about 20 points or whatever. But going forward, I think certainly any one of these 4 are great options. Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Sainz. And that's why I think autopilot is going to be quite useful for me in Brazil, because it's a bit of a dangerous track. It's a dangerous track in the dry. It looks like we're going to get some rain as well, so throw that into the mix. We just have potential for certainly at least 2, 3 or more DNFs. I think the safety car will definitely be coming out. And I just want to have that safety belt on, as well as trying to maximise the sprint points. So for example, if I maximise my budget, I had just enough to just do a simple swap of Piastri to Leclerc. I could just autopilot, and then whoever scores highest out of Leclerc or Norris, as long as they don't both randomly DNF or whatever, then I'll score pretty handsomely. So yeah, I think if you've got autopilot, great chance to use it. I think you've got no negative, great chance to use it 3 times. Me personally, I'm gonna save it for Qatar, unless something drastic changes. But I think Qatar looks like a better bet for me. Just stick with the autopilot this weekend. The thing is with the autopilot as well, it's just high chance of just doing nothing, to be honest, because it's between 2 drivers. Like these guys down here, Albon, Colapinto, Bottas, they're never going to be my top scorer of the weekend. So it's literally a coin flip of who's going to score better, Norris or Leclerc. I don't know. I don't know who's going to score better, but half the time it's going to just do nothing, this chip. But this is probably a slightly better opportunity to use it than a non-sprint weekend, I guess. What is in terms of the actual team selection? Like I said, this is something that I'm considering because the Ferraris and the McLarens both look almost neck and neck, and McLaren keep finding a way to just get tangled up in a little bit of mess, like we just had it in Mexico. Obviously, with Piastri going out in Q1, Lando Norris getting tangled up with Verstappen. And I do think the Verstappen versus Norris thing is actually a bit of a factor going forward. It just seems that whenever Verstappen comes anywhere near his title rival, we saw it with Lewis Hamilton, we're seeing it now with Lando Norris. He just drives a bit erratically. I'm just gonna throw out there that Verstappen was a bit silly in Mexico. There's high chances of it just happening again. It just could happen. So edging your bets away from McLaren even entirely is absolutely viable as well, and I'm definitely considering going with this. And because I've got 3 transfers to use, I could even ditch off the Turn 1 DNFer for like a more premium guy like a Hulkenberg. Can't quite get to Magnussen. I definitely like the look of Hulkenberg because the Hazards look really strong and they keep scoring points. So I could certainly go Hulkenberg. The other alternative is probably Liam Lawson for me. So I could use all 3 transfers to ditch off McLaren apart from their constructor, who, by the way, doing pretty well for pit stop points in the last race, so that's something to bear in mind as well. I could certainly see myself just going all in triple Ferrari, and I'd also bear in mind that we've got Las Vegas coming up after this little mini break, just in between the 2 sprint races. And Las Vegas is, particularly last season, was a very strong Ferrari track, and I think it's going to be another strong track for them this year. So going into Las Vegas already with triple Ferraris feels like a quite comfortable place to be. As well as Carlos Sainz, just in general, just performing really well, and he's just got that 1 million rise. What's to say he can't get another million rise? Admittedly, it's probably less likely this weekend unless he just basically wins everything, like wins the sprint, wins the race, wins drive of the day, wins fastest lap, everything, because there's quite a few overtake opportunities on here. I think the C-tier assets, providing there's no DNFs, although I think there will be DNFs, I think in general the C-tier assets will be scoring higher, so we're relying on DNFs for people, that B-tier asset to kind of rise that much more. And anyway, at this stage of the season, the budget isn't that much of a concern for me, to be honest. More in just for the points. Final 4 races, my rank is languishing a little bit. I've dropped off the last couple of races. Definitely took a big mistake a couple of races ago, trusting Mercedes. On the subject of Mercedes, I think I'm just kind of off them entirely. They're just so unpredictable. They were literally like miles off the win and the podium even around Mexico. And Brazil is a pretty strong track for them, kind of historically speaking. And we know Lewis Hamilton kind of loves Brazil as his kind of second home as well. But I just can't bring myself to trust them. And why do I really need to trust them? McLaren and Ferrari are just clearly neck and neck in the 2 best constructors. I don't think I need to dabble in the Mercedes. If I did, there's a temptation potentially for Hamilton. Like maybe if Hamilton looks amazing, I could go that road, but I just don't think I will. Again, he's another B-tier asset that could rise nicely. But like I say, budget is least of my concern. I want to maximise the points, and I'm kind of looking at how I'm going to maximise those points. And I think at the moment, let's just reset this. Actually, it's much easier than clicking my way for it. At the moment, I think the best way to do that is to get at least 1 Ferrari driver. I don't know if that's Leclerc or Sainz. And it's going to be kind of tough to tell because we've only got the first practice session and then we've got the sprint qualifying. So it could be a case of who looks comfortable through the first practice session, and obviously who's in a good position going into or coming out of sprint qualifying. I think it's very much like that because it is pretty much flipping coins at the moment. It's flipping coins between the likes of Norris, Sainz, Leclerc and Piastri. And I do think Piastri is still viable. I think he's definitely still viable and he's still capable of winning a race, but he does seem to just very slightly taking a little bit of a step back, slightly off the gas, so to speak, in just the last few races. I still think he's a great driver and I still think he's capable of scoring really well, but the momentum is really there of the Ferraris. Like I said, I think the Ferraris are also going to do well around Las Vegas, which is the race afterwards. So I definitely want to get a little bit of Ferrari coverage, I think, more than just a constructor. I think otherwise I'm likely to just fall behind. I'd imagine, I haven't actually looked at the numbers for the ownership of Ferraris, but I imagine the top a few thousand. Ferrari are more heavily owned than what I currently have. I have the triple McLaren, just Ferrari constructor, and I think Ferraris are just on that upward trajectory. And yes, anything can happen. They might just mess up in Brazil this coming weekend, but I think in general I'm quite comfortable going with a Ferrari driver, or potentially even just tripling up on them and kind of just going for it. Like I say, probably ditching off Albon. I could also ditch off Bottas, but I don't think that really gets me anywhere. In fact, no, it doesn't get me anywhere. It goes me up to Guan Yu Zhou, which also isn't very appealing. So Bottas just as a nice little budget enabling, Albon up to someone like a Lawson or a Hulkenberg for me seems like the way to go. Autopilot also works really well going this way. It doesn't just work well with Norris plus Leclerc or Norris plus Sainz. I think both Leclerc and Sainz are also very evenly matched at the moment. And it's very tough to know who's gonna do well, who's not. So again, I would be very happy putting autopilot on with a triple up here. So yeah, kind of overall, I'm thinking going into the Ferraris using autopilot and just hoping to come out strong. Like I say, autopilot, it may very well do nothing, but got to use it at some point. So why not go for it? In terms of other constructors and other thoughts and other drivers. Red Bull for me, it's off the menu entirely. Perez makes them such a weak asset, such an overpriced asset. Perez is just doing terribly, unfortunately. I mean, there's potential he might not even finish the season if Christian Horner's comments would be taken realistically. But I think he'll certainly be racing around Brazil anyway. Well, I say certainly, nothing certain in F1, but regardless, even if someone came in who's going to replace him right now, move Lawson straight into the Red Bull seat, and then it's too much shuffling around for him, in my opinion. So yeah, I think Red Bull definitely off the menu. Like I say, McLaren, Ferrari, great stuff. Mercedes off the menu. Aston Martin, again, they had a reasonable race around here last season, but they're just too inconsistent. And reliability issue last weekend. Stroll is going nowhere. The RBs look okay. We didn't see much of them from last week because Tsunoda obviously crashed out in that turn one kind of incident, and Lawson raced kind of strongly, but ended up getting damaged towards the end of the race and just kind of languished down the bottom there. So the only other team that kind of interest are the Hazards. Like I say, as a constructor, I'm not going to go near them, particularly on a sprint weekend. I just don't think any of these C-tier assets are viable as a constructor. You want to make sure, particularly on a sprint weekend, you just go as hard as you can on those constructors. But they're certainly interesting. The Hazards are certainly interesting, particularly for me and my budget. I can't get to Magnussen, otherwise I think I prefer him. But I'm certainly interested in the likes of Hulkenberg. Like I said, I could quite very easily do that. I'll be quite happy with the Hazards because they're just been really consistent. Let's have a look at Hulkenberg recent scores since his -3 in Italy: 6-6, 11-9. That's really, really strong for a C-tier asset. Then you've got Magnussen, obviously the -25 in Azerbaijan there doesn't help his cause, nor does a particularly poor weekend in Singapore, but more recently, since that upgrade came in Kota, 9 points, 15 points. 15 points is massive. Like he had a really good race. Like honestly, if driver of the day was like legitimately awarded to the actual driver of the day, I would personally just give it to Magnussen from Mexico. I think he had a storming great weekend, great pace, really strong stuff. So yeah, if I could afford Magnussen, I'd be interested in him, but I can't with what I'm doing here. But yeah, Hulkenberg's certainly a good little backup there. So kind of going down that route. The Alpines don't interest me whatsoever. And then past that, it's just the riffraff at the bottom. So yeah, I think this is kind of where I'm heading. I think I'm still very much open to just holding on to my C-tier asset there and just keeping hold of Lando Norris, going Norris plus Leclerc or Norris plus Sainz. But I am kind of very tempted with the triple up on Ferrari and sticking the autopilot on. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking at the moment. As always, keen to know what your thoughts are and feelings are. Are you going to be using any chips this weekend? If you are, let me know. I'd imagine there's some people that be throwing 3 times out there, but for me, it's just that's in the pocket for guitar. So yeah, so thanks so much for listening to me. I'm starting to waffle now, so I'm just going to end the video and see you soon for some more F1 Fantasy content. Hope you liked it. I'll catch you soon for some more. Bye for now.